Ethan froze as the nursery camera flickered alive. Blood on the white carpet. Aaliyah's dark hands trembling as she shielded his twin babies with her own body. For 7 silent minutes, he'd watched a stranger fight for children who weren't even hers, while he hid behind a screen of fear and privilege. The monitor crackled again, catching her whisper through the static. "It's okay, babies. I got you." Rain hammered against the mansion glass. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan's chest tightened as guilt burned hotter than panic, because the woman bleeding on his floor was the same one he'd secretly installed cameras to spy on. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening and the world needs to hear them. His fingers shook as he grabbed the phone. 911. There's blood in the nursery. My kids, my maid, she's hurt. The dispatcher's calm voice cut through his breathless words, promising help. But Ethan's reflection in the mirror looked nothing like a savior. Just a rich man who never trusted a woman because of her skin. He had hired Aaliyah 2 months ago. 29, soft-spoken, dark brown skin that caught the morning light like bronze. The agency said she was quiet but capable. He'd liked that. Quiet people didn't question orders. But the first thing he'd done after welcoming her was order new locks, new cameras, new ways to watch. Each morning she arrived early, humming gospel tunes while warming milk for the twins. She never complained when he avoided eye contact, never asked why her purse was checked at the door. Ethan told himself it was protocol. In truth, it was prejudice dressed as policy. Now, that prejudice was bleeding on his nursery floor. He replayed the footage again. The silver chain in Aaliyah's torn hand glinting under the flicker of the mobile. The twins' cries softened as her arm curved around them. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She just protected. Outside, blue lights danced against the wet driveway. Inside, Ethan stood motionless, listening to his own children's faint sobs through the wall. For the first time in years, the house he'd built to feel invincible suddenly felt human. And for the first time in his life, Ethan realized the only person he truly needed to trust was the one he doubted most. Morning sunlight spilled across polished marble floors, turning the mansion into a stage of quiet perfection. Ethan sat at the long dining table, sipping his coffee while the twins' laughter drifted from the nursery. Every sound in the house was calm. Every feeling inside him was not. Aaliyah moved silently through the room, folding linen napkins with military precision. Her uniform was spotless, her hair tied neatly back. She paused only to check the baby monitor clipped to her apron. The twins cooed on screen, reaching for their rattles. "Coffee, sir?" she asked softly. He nodded without looking up. "Leave it there." When she turned away, his eyes followed, curious, cautious, conflicted. He watched how she never touched the furniture unless necessary, how she always kept a careful distance, as if the air itself reminded her where she didn't belong. To anyone else, she was an employee. To him, she was a reminder that trust didn't come easy, not when the world had taught him to lock every door twice. Yet each morning she brought light into rooms that had forgotten what warmth felt like. She played soft music for the twins. She whispered stories about courage, about kindness. Sometimes, Ethan heard her laugh with them, and something inside him would twist, half guilt, half envy. But the cameras were always watching, always judging, and so was he. When deliveries arrived, he checked every bag before she carried it in. When she left for groceries, his security system tracked her steps. He told himself it was safety. Deep down, it was fear. Fear that a black woman in his white-walled world might prove more human than he ever dared to be. That evening, a storm gathered over the Seattle skyline. Aaliyah stood by the window, holding Charlotte on her hip while Levi tugged at her sleeve. Lightning flashed across their faces, hers calm, theirs gleeful. Ethan watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "They like you," he said finally. She smiled gently. "Children don't see color, sir. Only care." Her words hit harder than thunder. He nodded once, pretending not to care, but her voice echoed long after she left the room. Outside, the first raindrops hit the glass. Inside, something unspoken began to shift, quietly, dangerously, like the air before a storm. The mansion slept beneath a sky split by thunder. Midnight rain lashed against the windows, each drop echoing through the empty halls like a warning no one heard. Aaliyah had just laid the twins to sleep. Their tiny hands clutched matching bears, their breathing soft and steady. She smiled, adjusted the blanket, then turned off the lamp, leaving only the glow of the nightlight owl. Downstairs, Ethan scrolled through emails in his study, the flicker of security feeds painting restless light across his face. Every room still, every door sealed. Routine, safe, until the nursery camera went black. He frowned. One blink. Two. Static hissed through the monitor. Then silence. Aaliyah, he called through the intercom. No answer. He rose uneasy. Outside, the storm grew louder. Inside, the power cut for exactly 3 seconds, just long enough for the entire house to forget how to breathe. Then came the crash. Glass. A scream. The alarm finally caught up. Ethan ran. The hallway lights sputtered alive as motion sensors detected chaos. From the nursery, he heard a muffled cry, then another sound. A struggle. Aaliyah's voice tore through the dark. Stay back. He burst through the door and froze. A shadowed figure wrestled with her near the crib. The man's gray jacket flashed under lightning. Aaliyah's arm swung, fierce, desperate. The nightlight shattered, scattering porcelain and sparks. She fell, dragging the intruder's sleeve down with her. Blood streaked across her temple. The twins wailed. Ethan lunged forward, but the attacker bolted through the balcony door and vanished into the storm. For a second, everything was still, except the rain pounding the floor and Aaliyah's labored breathing. She pulled herself up on trembling arms. They're safe, she whispered. I didn't let him take them. Ethan knelt beside her, voice breaking. Why didn't you run? She met his eyes, calm even through pain. Because they can't. Sirens wailed in the distance again, closer this time. The blue lights he had always trusted were finally coming, but too late to prove what loyalty looked like. As he held the phone to his ear, his gaze dropped to the silver pendant glinting near the crib. A memory, a mistake, a clue. And for the first time, Ethan understood. The real threat hadn't broken in from outside. It had been living in his blind spot all along. If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe. Blue lights flashed across the marble driveway as officers stormed the mansion. Ethan stood frozen beside the nursery door, his hands still stained with Aaliyah's blood. On the monitor replay, every frame cut through him like glass. The woman he doubted, watched, and mistrusted had taken the blows meant for his children. Detective Malik entered, tall, calm, voice steady as stone. Who found her first? I did, Ethan muttered. She saved them. Malik nodded once, kneeling beside Aaliyah as medics worked. She fought hard, he said. Looks like whoever came knew the layout. You got enemies, Mr. Cole. Ethan's jaw tightened. Everyone with money does. The detective's eyes lifted slowly. Or maybe someone closer. Those words landed like thunder. Ethan's gaze drifted toward the pendant lying on the crib edge. The same silver flower his ex-wife, Ashley, used to wear. He'd locked it away months ago after she'd left with half his fortune. Yet here it was blood-spattered, gleaming under nursery light. Aaliyah stirred on the stretcher, whispering through cracked lips. He said she sent him the safe key. Then she passed out. Ethan's breath caught. Ashley. He turned to Malik, voice hoarse. She wasn't supposed to come back. Malik folded his notepad. Then we both know who to find. As the paramedics carried Aaliyah out, Ethan followed to the porch. Rain fell harder now, cleansing yet cold. He reached the stretcher rail, whispering, I didn't trust you, and you still saved them. No reply. Only the faint rise and fall of her breathing beneath the oxygen mask. When the ambulance doors shut, the mansion behind him suddenly felt too big, too quiet, too guilty. Inside, security screens blinked between static and replay, each image reminding him of what he'd almost lost. For years, he had measured safety by control, locks, codes, cameras. Tonight, He learned real safety came from courage, and hers had been stronger than all his walls combined. The morning after the break-in, the mansion was crawling with investigators. Cameras clicked. Reporters gathered by the gate. What had once been Ethan's private fortress was now public crime scene and headline gold. Across every channel, one line repeated: Black Maid saves twins from midnight attacker in Billionaire's home. Ethan watched in silence as the footage looped on TV. Aaliyah's bruised face, her torn uniform, her body shielding the babies. Each replay twisted the knife of guilt a little deeper. Detective Malik stood near the fireplace, scrolling through his tablet. "Confirmed," he said. "The intruder's name is Ryan Trent. Known hacker, ex-contractor. Your ex-wife wired him 15 grand 2 weeks ago." Ethan's voice dropped. "Ashley," Malik nodded. "Looks like she wanted access to your safe. Probably thought she could grab whatever you hid there and vanish." Ethan exhaled, and Aaliyah paid the price. Outside, reporters shouted questions. "Did you really spy on your staff? Was the maid insured? Is this another billionaire cover-up?" Ethan shut the blinds, heart pounding. For years, he'd lived to control the narrative. Now the world was writing it for him. Malik looked up. "Public's already chosen a hero, and it's not you." Ethan gave a bitter laugh. For once, maybe that's fair. Hours later, he walked through the hospital corridor. Every step echoed like judgment. Through the window, he saw Aaliyah lying still, for lines, bandaged arm, eyes closed but peaceful. A nurse whispered, "She keeps asking if the babies are okay." He pressed his palm to the glass. "They're safe," he murmured. "Because of you." That evening, social media exploded. Hashtag Black Maid Hero, hashtag Justice for Leah, hashtag Hidden Cameras Truth comment after comment flooded in. Praise for her, disgust for him. For the first time in his life, Ethan didn't try to silence the noise. He let it roar, because every word tearing him apart was also setting her free. When Detective Malik returned, Ethan's tone had changed. "Find her a lawyer," he said. "A good one. Whatever it costs." Malik studied him. "Why?" "Because the woman I spied on just saved everything I love. The least I can do is make sure the world hears her side first." The hospital room was quiet except for the slow, rhythmic hum of the heart monitor. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, painting pale lines across Aaliyah's face. Her bandaged arm rested beside her. Her breathing was steady, the kind of peace that comes after surviving chaos. Ethan stood in the doorway, unsure if he deserved to enter. He had rehearsed 100 ways to apologize, but none seemed enough. When she opened her eyes, her voice came out soft, tired. "You didn't have to come, sir." "I had to," he said. "You saved my children. You saved me." Aaliyah's lips curved faintly. "I did my job." He shook his head. "You did what I never had the courage to do. Trust someone without proof." Silence settled between them. Then she whispered, "I heard what the news is saying. They're calling me a hero. I'm not one. You are." Ethan said firmly, "Because you protected innocence when I let prejudice blind me." Her eyes glistened. "Prejudice," she repeated. "That's a polite word for fear." He lowered his head. "Then I've lived scared for too long." She looked toward the window, voice almost a whisper. "When I first came to your house, I thought you just liked order. I didn't realize you were building walls to hide inside." Ethan's throat tightened. "Those walls nearly cost me everything." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "Maybe this is your second chance." He nodded slowly. "If you let me earn it." She studied his face for a moment before replying. "Second chances don't start with guilt, Mr. Cole. They start with gratitude." Ethan exhaled deeply, like a man finally learning how to breathe. "I am grateful," he said. "More than you'll ever know." As the nurse entered to check her for, Aaliyah turned away, but not before whispering, "Then don't say it, show it." That night, Ethan returned home and stood before the security console. His reflection stared back from the black glass screen. The same man who'd built a digital fortress. With one tap, he deleted every camera feed. The house went dark, silent, human again. For the first time in years, Ethan slept without watching anyone. And for the first time in his life, someone had forgiven him before he even asked. Spring sunlight warmed the garden, soft and gold against the white walls of the mansion that once felt like a cage. Now it echoed with laughter, real human laughter. Aaliyah sat on the grass with the twins, their giggles spilling through the air as they chased bubbles across the lawn. Levi stumbled into her lap. Charlotte tugged at her braid until both burst into joyful shrieks. From the porch, Ethan watched quietly. He still carried his guilt, but it had changed shape. No longer a weight, just a reminder. The cameras were gone. The locks had changed. And for the first time, his home felt safe without being guarded. Aaliyah looked up and smiled. "You just gonna stand there? Or help us?" He chuckled, stepping down onto the grass. "Last time I tried, I almost tripped over a toy giraffe." She laughed softly, then learned faster. They grow up quick. He knelt beside her, helping the twins pop bubbles, his hands trembling not from fear, but from something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Minutes passed in quiet ease until Aaliyah spoke again. "The detective called. They found your ex-wife's partner, both in custody." Ethan nodded. "I don't hate her anymore. I just hope she finds what she was really chasing." Aaliyah's eyes softened. "Freedom? Maybe," he said, "but she'll never know what it feels like to truly be forgiven." The breeze picked up, brushing against her face. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," she said gently. "It just means you stop letting the wound speak for you." Ethan looked at her, sunlight catching her dark skin like bronze fire. "You know," he murmured, "for someone who said she wasn't a hero, you're starting to sound like one." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I just learned from surviving." The twins climbed into her arms, one on each side. She looked at Ethan, her voice calm, certain. "They don't see color, Ethan. Let's make sure they never have to." He nodded, eyes wet but steady. "We will." The camera would have loved this moment, but there wasn't one. Only truth, forgiveness, and the sound of two babies laughing under an open sky. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.